Okay, so I'm here with Dani Catania. And Dani, so excited for you to join me. Thank you for joining me today as well with this chat. I know we've been in behind the scenes conversations because we're creating something that's going to be very, very cool within the women to wealth space. And I'm super grateful to be creating that with you. And we're going to talk about that at the end of this conversation. But for those listening in who maybe you're meeting or hearing of Dani Catania for the first time, we've actually done some really cool things together over the years because I've been bringing you I've been tapping on your shoulder a bit over the last few years. Like I'm like, come, I need your help with this. Come, the ladies need you to talk to this. And the reason being is because health is a core pillar in women to wealth, because we know if we don't have that functioning at a high level, there's a very slim chance that anything else can function at a high level. And so Dani Catania is a dietitian. She is a leading expert in, I would say, alternate thinking in nutrition and in lifestyle. And that's what I've loved about you, Dani, is you actually take all these, I'm going to say they're not big words, but they're big conversations in the world, very diverse, very opinionated, right? There's so much going on in that space. But what I appreciate and what I know women who have worked with you in our space appreciate is your real world terms and relatability, and taking what can seem complicated and overwhelming and like do your head in kind of information and making it like, oh, I get that. I know I can be in charge of my health. I know what I can do to help my health. Great. Thank you for giving me that power and empowering me. So I know for you as well, I just want to kind of ring your horn for a little bit, because you have had an incredible background. You have worked with some of the biggest sports stars and sporting teams. So, in AFL, it's St Kilda. Now, I'm not a big AFL fan, but I think anyone in Australia knows who that is. Probably everyone overseas knows who that team is. So St Kilda, AFL, the Australian Ballet, you've worked with sports stars, taken them to the Olympics, to the World Championships. Maybe you want to expand on that a little bit more, because before we get into our conversation, which I'm excited for, I would love to know, having worked with some of the biggest names that we would all know, what has surprised you most about working with people at that level with their health, with getting them and switching them into a new gear of their health? If you can expand on that and share with us what you love most about it, and then let's get into the conversation.
Oh, awesome, Nick. Thank you so much for having me. And that's a cool question. No one's ever asked me that before, and that is a very, very cool question. So I would probably say two things, actually. Two things have been surprising. I think when working across different teams and different types of athletes, I think that's probably been number one, the biggest surprise of how, so some sports, so say like in AFL football, I think it's probably, I would dare say, probably where the money is as well. So in AFL, I've worked with a lot of swimming champs as well. Those type of sports tend to be, actually the money rule actually doesn't work, and I'll explain why in a second, but for the most part they take their nutrition really seriously. In fact, I remember it's almost becomes a religion when, especially like if it's pre-game or pre-event, and that's when you know that you're at the top of your game, when you have like the religious type, like days, like 3 days out from a game or from an event. So that's probably fact number one. I think the other thing is it's equally surprising when I see athletes that are very talented. So at the moment I'm working with some circus athletes, and to contrast that, like I've worked with jockeys and dancers, and so it's those kind of sports actually where I think where nutrition is like just, if not more, paramount to the sport or to the the event, where it's actually they don't consider themselves as athletes. I think that's been probably the most surprising thing of working in sport. Where it's I've worked with some incredible people, and it's just been an incredible ride. The thing that I'm loving most now is probably over the last, I'll probably say probably more like 10 years, working especially with women. As I've become a mum myself, I've got a 7-year-old daughter who is or nearly 8, and I think in that journey, I think realizing how not only important women's health is, but I go to say it's critical, because we are, whether you're a mother or not, or you're in a carer space or not, whether you're driving a business home or whatever space you find yourself in, I think we have such incredible power. And for us to be able to put our health back on the priority list, this is what I've been really passionate about probably over the last 10 years.
Yeah, I love that, Dani. And you are leading the way with that. And it's so important. I was sharing with you when we were speaking the other week that I got pneumonia a few weeks ago, and it knocked me absolutely sideways. I have never been that unwell. And I just lost all that. Just my body just was not functioning. My mind was not functioning. And it was just that reminder, that very visceral, obviously, reminder, like I was experiencing it, of just how important our health is, our overall health, our mind, our body, our spirit, all of that. And you just never want to get to the point where it's like, you lose it before you appreciate it. It's like, no, you said something, that how important it is. It's like, it is vital. And, speaking to women every day, and you saying people like jockeys or people who work in the circus, they never really picture themselves as athletes, and maybe the nutrition or the lifestyle isn't as important or front of mind for them. But I think that's the everyday person. I think that's the everyday woman at times, is that, especially in our space, it's women wanting to create different results in their life and elevate their results. But it really amuses me, because I'm like, we can't elevate any result until we elevate ourselves. And that includes our health. And so really just bringing it to the forefront, like you said. And, for anyone listening in, I'm sure you will agree. It's like, oh my gosh, do not wait for the sign or the experience or until you lose your health, until you make it the priority in your life. So that's what we're here to talk about today.
Yeah, and if I can, 100%, Nick, and I think if I can add something to that is, listen to your body when it whispers, not when it screams. And that's really what we're talking about today, right? How you can, I think really the theme for today is how to stay healthy in an increasingly unhealthy world. That's really
Yes.
what I'm super passionate about.
I want to dive into that straight away, you just saying that, because and this is just, I guess, my opinion and experience with what I see. On one side, we have more information and access to answers than we've ever had. We have more research than we've ever done. We have more brilliant minds on this one earth than we've ever had. It's all there. Yet it feels like and looks like we are becoming more and more unhealthy from different things. And, there was research done recently, and they did a study with adults, and it was 70%, I think I wrote it down, it's 70% of adults are reporting higher levels of stress and generally feeling more unhealthy these last couple of years post the big old C. I'll just say the big old C. I think everyone knows what I'm talking about. So post the big old C, 70% of adults are feeling that way. And so that, to me, I'm like, okay, what are we dealing with here? Can you speak to that? We have all this access more than ever before. We generally know, I think the average person generally knows how to be healthy, but then we're dealing with a world that maybe has never been so unhealthy on the other side. Like, we're dealing with different external variables in our food, in our air, all what we're putting on our body. Can you just speak to that a little bit? Because that's what I feel the conundrum we're in.
Yeah, 100%. And I think I've been on this journey probably for the last, I would say, 8 years before we had my daughter. Because I had, and just to, I haven't shared this actually very openly, but I had an early miscarriage, and it was a bit of a before I had Alia, and it was a bit of a wake up call, because it was like, actually, I know better. I know we can do better, and as I started to deep dive into cleaner living and picking apart things that were, destroying our health, why was that so important at that particular time in my life? Because I was trying to create new life, and I see it. I have a lot of friends. It's very sad at the moment. I see, and I know most of us would know either someone who's struggling with the challenge of infertility, or who's had recurrent miscarriages. And my heart absolutely breaks, because there are so many things that we can do. And we're not here to talk about, fertility and miscarriages, a little off topic, but just to highlight, there are some clues as to what's going on around us that kind of highlights some
Yeah,
of
I think
the,
that's
I guess, the
important.
world that we're living in. And I think, you touched on it. I actually made a bit of a list in front of me, because I was like, well, what is making our world so unhealthy at the moment? And why is it, like you said, we have access to so much more information than we did, say, 100 years ago, but we have so many more challenges to combat as a result. So everything from EMF to geoengineering to 5G phone towers to environmental toxins, mandates, things like, pharmaceuticals that are being used in our old livestock. And then obviously we're consuming that. GMO, heavy metals, pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, and all of the farming chemicals. And I'm actually probably going to stop there, because I don't want to, this is not about, we're not going to go down
It's
any
a lot.
rabbit hole.
I'm like, I don't even want to walk outside.
And the thing is that, and I'm a very kind of 80-20 person, right? If we can do our best 80% of the time, control what we can control, that
Yes.
we don't live in a ball of cotton wool. We were never designed to do that. But what we were designed is, we weren't designed to cope with this onslaught of and barrage of chemicals and things around us, most of which we can actively reduce in our immediate environment. And we should be doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I
And I
love
could
that.
probably go on to, just having a look at my notes too, that I think when this is, like I said, it's not about a rabbit hole. This is really about, like, what is the end point, right? Because I love your podcast, Nick, and I listen to it. I love the fact, like, we're all women looking for more success in all areas of our life, in money, in business, and in health. And when the health kind of piece or puzzle piece drops, it's things that can result in things like, not being able to think clearly or focus clearly, or having that brain fog or feeling indecisive. It can be, how well you feel in your body. And the way we talk about that is our inflammatory state, right? And it's like, that can show up in lots of different ways. I'm sure we'll talk about that as we go on.
Yeah, can we maybe let's look at that now, because it's about where to start. That's what
Yes.
where my thinking is going. For
Yeah.
someone listening to this, it's like, okay, yeah, that's what we're up against in a sense. And hey, we were designed in a way that we are strong and our bodies do incredible magical work. But there's things that it wasn't designed for. And so that, knowing what we're up against, then it's about, well, where do I start? And you mentioned something there, because what I heard was awareness of maybe knowing your body, knowing how you do feel, but then how you could feel, so how do you pick up on, if my body is inflamed? How do I pick up on if my body is operating at a 3 out of 10 and I think I'm normal? I think I'm a 7 or 8 out of 10. But actually, no, you're operating down here
Much
like
more.
shit, quite
Yeah.
frankly. Like, you're not getting shit done. You don't have clarity when you get up in the morning. You're, drinking wine to chill yourself down at night, and you're sipping on 3 coffees a day just to perk yourself up during the day. Like, we're all out of sync. So I don't know if maybe you can speak to some of the things that, as women, we might be feeling and experiencing, that we can go, hey, let me become aware of that in my body. And then let's talk about, well, where do we start and go from there?
Yeah. No, that's a great starting point. And I think the number one thing you just said too is that that awareness, like
Yeah.
awareness of, and it's really interesting. I've been working with a few athletes, and not to sort of, I'm going to use them as examples, um, because it feels obvious to me that as an athlete, you should know your body quite well. But these guys, like, I know that they're under fueling, and I'm like, how are you feeling in training? And they're kind of like, I just feel like how I always feel. I'm like, okay. In my head, I'm thinking, well, you feel like crap most of the time. So you probably, you don't know any better. You don't know how different it is to feel better, right? And so I think sometimes we can get stuck in that. I think also we excuse a lot of things as aging, or we kind of are quick to brush things off rather than really addressing it. So I think, I guess maybe what I can talk about, Nick, is potentially about, I guess, first step is, how does inflammation show up in our world and in our daily lives, and then I guess probably the obvious thing is, like, what do we do about it? And I think inflammation is like a real word that gets bandied around, and it's such a general term. So I want to kind of drill down more into, if it's okay with you,
That'd be great. Yep.
to what it looks like and where it comes from, and what are the things that we can fix. So how it might show up is, there are disease states, right? Everything stems from inflammation. So from I see a lot of metabolic dysfunction in my online nutrition practice, and it doesn't have to be diabetes. It can be pre-diabetes, it can be PCOS, it can be an inability to shift weight, it can be cardiovascular challenges, it can be thyroid issues. In fact, I actually think so many of us are affected by thyroid challenges, that it is becoming now almost like the root of all disease states. So it's definitely something that we need to pay more attention to. Things like, endometriosis or menstrual function. Our menstrual function is such a great way, just to take 30 seconds to talk about this. It is such a great way for us women, to know exactly how our body's functioning and how we're feeling. You've got a heavy period, or you've got a painful period, that tells you something. If it's a late period or an early period, that tells you something. When you're actually menstruating, depending on, and not to get all hippie and woo-woo, but depending on the moon cycle, can actually tell us where we're at in our life. If, like, for example, just a random fact, if we are menstruating on, say, like a half or a quarter moon, that can be a sign of that we're in a transitional phase in our lives. New moons, if you're bleeding on a new moon, it can be new beginnings. On a full moon, you're kind of in your power. And any changes to that can give us some clues as to how we've done in that month. If you're stressed, it's going to affect that. So we are so lucky that we have the ability every month to kind of have this kind of check-in. So use it. There's a lot of information. And again, we could almost do a separate episode just for menstrual stuff, but we're not going to go there. But it gives us big clues as to how you are feeling and how you're functioning in your body. Mental health issues are a huge sign of, and can be a telltale sign of inflammation. So things like, if depression, anxiety, are all stem from inflammation. Autoimmune disorders, hormonal dysfunction. I work with a lot of women who are often saying, I feel like I need to get a hormone panel done because I just think, feels like it's out of whack. And that is often, again, there is some metabolic challenges happening, and there is inflammation at the root of that. So there's some signs that we can, they're kind of like telltale signs. Even things like, how do you feel when you wake up in the morning? Do you feel like you can move with ease? Do you feel like, and recently this has been a good lesson for me, because, like you said, I live in this world. I am real. I'm not immune to any of these things. Just recently I've been waking up in the morning, and like the soles of my feet have been sore. And I'm like, okay, I know what this is, and I know what I can do about it. And so I'll share more about that as kind of we get on. But for me, I was like, okay, there's a few things that I've been letting slide. I can do better than this. And I guess probably the second part of that is, where does inflammation come from? Because that's often kind of the next question, right? And that is, if we look at it at the base or the root cause of it is cellular inflammation, right? And we'll talk more about that, because I think there's a big piece to that. There's physical inflammation. So there's things like joints, tendons, and they can stem from like lots of different causes. So poor gut health, or a microbiome that's out of balance, that's often one of the biggest causes. Looking at, say, your omega-3 to 6 balance, that is something that I don't think we're talking enough about, and it's something that gets very, very quickly overlooked, but it's something that we need to get back on our radar, because that is pure inflammation right there. We can also, things like, I've been doing some training in our methylation, in the world of methylation, and again, not to bore you with all of the details, but methylation there's some very complicated or complex chemical reactions that happen inside our body, but at the root of it's how we are copying our DNA and how well we are doing that. And if there are some really, really simple markers that we can check that give us a very, very good indication of where are you at. If you are undermethylating or overmethylating, this gives us a lot of information that we can then work with. Obviously, there's some obvious things that we haven't, that I would be remiss not to mention, but things like nutrition and stress obviously impact our inflammatory state. And also there is the I guess the root cause, where it's epigenetic. So that's kind of, I guess that's like all of your DNA is like a recipe, and it's your body's ability to create the recipe, and how well is it creating the recipe, and which recipes is it choosing. Because I see a lot of, and I'll finish with this piece, I promise I'll end this monologue.
No, please don't.
But I see so many people, it's really interesting.
Paper.
Awesome. I see so many people like getting DNA tests, and it's interesting because it's actually, for example, you might have a certain gene that codes for something. Let's talk actually MTHFR gene, right? Because that's kind of been on some of our radar, especially when we talk about methylation. You can have one or both of the genes that code for the MTHFR gene mutation. However, if your diet is on track, if you are looking after your body, it doesn't mean that gets expressed. It doesn't mean that recipe gets made. And it's not as simple as just taking, a methylated vitamin. So anyway, I won't go into that, but there are so many things that we can do to address inflammation. And most of them are things that don't cost you anything at all.
That right there, the reason I've just got this big smile on my face is because we're also in this world of, the marketing machine, the pharmaceutical marketing machine, the health marketing machine, all of that. Like, what is the go-to fix? And so I love that you said there are so many things that we can do that aren't going to cost an arm and a leg, and that we have control of. I feel like I'm hearing a few things there, because I'm thinking of women who, it's like, we're already overwhelmed today, right? We're wearing all of the hats. Some of them we need to put down. Someone needs to tell us to put down some of those hats. But we're wearing all of the hats. We've never been more overstimulated. The noise of the world, the distraction, all of the information. I call it information constipation, because there's so much. You get constipated. Like, you listen to this podcast, you listen, and you go do all these Google researches, and you listen to another one, and then you've got so much information inside of you that you're not doing anything about it. You're constipated, and nothing's changing. But
I love that.
What I get from you, Dani, in all of our conversations is the first thing of the awareness is, I want you to be able to help all women and men as well. Obviously, just in Women's Wealth, we work specifically with women, but first to become aware. Like, when you said you got up and you could feel some pain on your heel, and you went, oh, I know what that is. Because I think so often we are normalizing feelings of being unhealthy, feelings of being broken in our body, feelings of being worn and torn, because you said it before, that's how it is, right? They tell you this is just an age thing. This is just a stage thing.
And on that as well, too, I think we're also, at 100%, we're living in an environment or in a society where we're taught to fear those things, and that we can't do
Mhm.
anything about them, and that we're going to need help, external help. And
Mhm.
really, I think the only, yes, if you have, and this is not doctor bashing, or it's not bashing our incredible medical care that we have access to. But in my personal experience in Western medicine, it is great, essential when you have an exploding appendix that needs to get out like ASAP before it kills you from the inside. Or it's for acute medicine, that's where it's at. Or you've just slid under a fence, like my brother did when we were young, slid under a barbed wire fence, ripped his leg almost from his knee to his hip. Right, so like you need stitches for that, right? So
Oh, yeah.
that is like acute medicine, where we are so privileged and lucky. But what we're talking about is this chronic underlying, or these chronic underlying issues that the only person who can take control of that is ourselves, is you. And so
Yes.
what I feel like what I do in this world is empower women, especially women, because we're generally the ones that like pay attention to this. Men catching up, but especially women, and we need to, because like we talked about earlier, right? We've got this critical role in what we do. But this is also why I love these conversations, because this is really about how can we empower you as the listener? How can we empower you as the woman who can, from today, make changes? From today, make a difference into how good you feel, into how well you wake up in the morning, into how, like, you can take action right now. It just takes a decision to do
Mhm.
something about it.
It totally does. And as you're saying that, Denny, I read somewhere, and it's so true, is that healthy women are the cornerstone to healthy societies. Like
Yes.
we are. It always
Yeah.
starts with us. We're the ones that, we recreate, we give our time, we give our resources, we're the nurturers and creators, right?
100%.
But it's healthy women create healthy societies. And that shouldn't feel heavy and loaded. That should feel empowering.
Yeah.
That's how important we are. And so it is. How do we get the baseline of health, which has gone to shit, up? How are we getting it up? And it starts with these conversations. I think it starts with the awareness. And that's what I want to ask you, for the woman who is listening in. What does she need to start to become aware of, do you think? What are maybe some of the most obvious things? And I know you kind of went through it, but let's touch on that again. And then where do you start? Because there is that gap between, until you know how good you can feel, then you can compare how terrible you've been feeling. But if you don't know that, your normal level is terrible. You don't know
Yeah.
anything outside of that. So do we have to start with, are there tests? Are there things that go, yeah, actually, you're a 3 out of 10, even though you think this is normal. So let's get you to a 5. Let's get you to a 6, and then you're going to be their most favorite person in the world. So can you touch on that a little bit? What do we become aware of and how? And then
Yep.
where do we start? And then I want to talk about what you're going to be doing with this, because that's going to be, I think, a big
Yeah.
part of it.
Awesome. Awesome. So I think, look, as for where to start, I think it can be overwhelming when you're trying to do everything at once. So I think the thing is, there are some small changes you can start with right now. I think the very, very first step would be take stock of kind of where you're at right now. Check in with how you're feeling and be brutally honest with yourself. Are you there's a couple of questions that you can ask yourself, like how do you feel when you get up in the morning? Are you hitting the snooze button a couple of times, wishing you could have more sleep? How easily are you falling asleep at night? Are you someone who, is it taking you a long time to fall asleep? How do you feel? And we all know, because we are well educated women who are listening here, right? And how would you rate your nutrition right now? And it doesn't take a dietitian to kind of to look at that. We know, especially it's things like, are you making the time to like prepare your meals. And I am not a meal prepper. I see incredible like Instagram images and TikToks of people who prepare like 2 weeks and they eat the same thing day in, day out for 2 weeks. I am not one of those people because I love food. My background's Maltese. Accidentally married one that's working out. We've been together for like 20 years, so it's good. But I always joke about that. And how we create more reasons to eat more. So I'm not one of these people. But if you are organized, if you know what you're eating 24 hours ahead, that is paying attention to what you're eating. It's things like quality protein, making sure you've got some, fruit and veggies on your plate. That should be the bulk of what we're eating. And again, we're not here to go into, because there's some different dietary applications depending on kind of where you're at. But there's some really, really simple things to start with. And no, it doesn't look
I
like
think those
swallowing.
questions, Danny, those questions to me are awesome. Be brutally honest with those questions. I'm going to pop them in our group for
Yeah,
women to
awesome.
just
And I think,
right
yeah,
now.
like, are you, yeah. And if I can add one more, it would be, are you prioritizing your own self-care? And I don't mean, this is not to mean, do you have a massage booked every week, or do you get a mani-pedi, no, self-care is actually like making a meal, not just for your kids and your family, but something that is going to nourish you. It is sitting down for breakfast in a quiet house, or for a quiet moment before the day begins. Is it, yeah, I think making sure that your self-care is at the top of that priority list, or on that priority list, is another, where does your
Yeah,
self-care
Benny,
feature?
that's huge. I think we should go into that conversation in our group, which everyone listening in needs to join our private groups, because I think we should have this in there. What I'm hearing is, because it pisses me off as well, it's the whole self-love marketing machine. We're getting sold into the marketing machine versus what matters.
Yeah.
And you're talking about
Oh,
what matters, the things that actually matter, that move the needle of our health and take this baseline health up, versus what makes us feel good in the moment. What makes us feel good for just a moment, but it doesn't have the longevity. It doesn't have the legs. In fact, it's got a dopamine hit, an instant gratification hit, and we think we're doing all the right things because that's the
you feel
marketing
good in the
machine.
moment.
Yeah, it's all this other stuff. So I'm going to pick your brain so that we can also get a bit of a roadmap of what that is in the
Yeah.
group. We might
Yeah.
even do it in this project that we're going to work on together.
Yep, that sounds amazing.
Yeah,
Awesome. And I
I
think
love that.
as far as, so to answer your question as well, so the first thing is, I guess, take stock. Take stock of where you're at. And obviously with those guiding questions. The second thing is there are some tests. I said there are lots of things that you can do for free. Most of these are free because you can go through your GP. Some of them do have a small cost, right? But nothing that's going to break the bank. And it's things like looking at your omega-3 to 6 balance. It's things like looking at, homocysteine is a fantastic way. It's a very simple test that you can get checked, that will give you an indication of your methylation status. And with the right practitioner who knows what they're looking at, they're going to be able to guide you. Most GPs will look at the healthy range and they'll say, oh, you're between 7 and 15, so you're in the healthy ranges. Actually, the magic number is 9. If you are either side of that, either way, then there are things that we need to fix, and that is actually not in range. And again, this is where probably that, what you said earlier, Nick, it's that alternative thinking. It's that how can we do better? And how can we not wait till something becomes a problem, like a heart attack, or like, that the end game, if you like. This is the preliminary final that we're talking about, right? And there's a couple of things like just recently I was listening to a podcast, and it was by one of the world's leading neuroscientists, and it was a really great podcast. And she's talking about the secret to big fat fluffy brains, right? So she was actually talking about what our brains look like, and she was like, there was these things that you can do for free starting today, and I was like, tell me. And it was exercise. It was exercise. She's like,
Yeah.
even going out for a 10-minute walk
Hmm.
changes the game, changes our brains. First thing in the morning, that was her advice, and this is coming from a neuroscientist. So I was like, well, if I needed any reminding from a neuroscientist, that'll do it. So, making time to exercise, we can go into what that looks like, whether it's now or down the track. And even things like cold showers, turning that, again, it's like stuff that's a little bit uncomfortable, but it's accessible and it's free. And the way it was described was, so it was basically, and I don't know, do you brave cold showers?
No, I don't. And you're speaking about it right now, and I'm like, I know I have
Should be
to.
doing this. Look, it is uncomfortable, but if I know anything about you, Nick, it is in the uncomfortable zone, and where it's uncomfortable that the greatest
Mhm.
transformation happens, and cold showers are no different. And we're talking about, so I've created this new rule for myself, where, because this all improves clarity and focus and how our body is functioning, right? So
Mhm.
when I've washed my hair, when I put the conditioner in my hair, then I turn the shower to like full cold.
Yep.
It's a very quick rinse. And
No
I'm
time
gradually
wasted.
getting better. There is a bit of like this happening, like just get my hair under there. But that is like bathing our brain in, it's like, I heard it described as a bubble bath for your brain.
That's
And
cool.
so, yeah,
Yes.
because it's the shock of it is that's where all of those neurotransmitters and everything kind of kick in. So if I had to say, if there were two things that you can do from today that could make a huge difference in your, not just your health, not just your productivity, but we're talking long-term health, it's exercise, gentle exercise first thing in the morning. There is evidence to
Mhm.
say that getting your sweat up actually has more benefits from a brain point of view, but any exercise is a good start. And I
Mhm.
also caution any hardcore exercise in the morning, because I make sure it's gentle, especially if you are particularly stressed or if there's adrenal fatigue in the picture. We haven't even spoken about adrenal fatigue, but most women, we have signs of it, um,
Mhm.
and yeah. And I feel like there's so many things, Nick, we could talk about. We could talk about. We haven't even touched on sleep and getting into a good, being able to have a really good, energizing sleep so that you wake up from tomorrow feeling like you've had a good sleep. And I'm not talking,
Mhm.
like there's so many things, and again, absolutely free, don't cost anything. It's just a matter of putting things into practice. There's so much stuff that we now understand about adrenal fatigue, and that's something that I know, especially as high performing women, is something that
Mhm.
needs to be on our radar. Um, so yeah, I might pause for a breath. And does that kind of, I know I've sort of,
So yes, absolutely. And you know what? As you're speaking through that, I'm thinking about sometimes the barriers that we put in our own way, right? Like I've known for a while that having the cold shower is good for you. Now, why am I not doing it? One, because I think it's going to be uncomfortable. But it's like, what's really uncomfortable? And that you talk about that short term pain, long term gain, do what's uncomfortable now or be uncomfortable for a really long time.
well,
Like it's
absolutely.
just logical stuff.
Yeah. And you said this, actually, I saw a post from you not long ago that talked about choose your heart,
Yeah.
like choose
Yeah,
your
it's
heart.
exactly that, right? Yeah. But you know what helps with this, Denny, and this is why I'm excited about the 6 week series and support environment that we're going to put in place, because I think a lot of it is making the decision, but giving your word. And we speak about this a lot. Like, I don't know what it is about humans, especially women. When we give our word to someone else, it does hold so much more power and weight. I mean, the word to ourselves needs to be enough. But when we do give it to someone else and we curate that environment of accountability, absolutely our success goes up in following through, in doing the thing and achieving the thing. And so it is little things like this, because I think on one side, we're dealing with women who it's like, far out, I already feel busy enough and overwhelmed enough. I do just want to feel good, but it can't take me 5 hours a day doing a 5 hour morning routine and doing all this stuff that people preach on Instagram. And it's like, it doesn't have to. We're overlooking the simple things that, with commitment to each other, with the right education, with the accountability to put the practice into place, we can just do. We can really do that and make some significant changes to our health. And I think that's important because sometimes we put that barrier in our way thinking, what's it going to take? This is going to take me like so much money, so
Yes,
much
and
time, my
time.
plate's already full. But then it's like, hold on, is it really? Because a simple example of that, the cold shower, it doesn't take any more time, any more effort. I'm having the shower
Boy.
anyway, and so should you. Everyone should be having a shower a day, if not two. If you don't,
Correct. That's
maybe
another
you shouldn't be.
conversation.
Maybe that's another conversation, but we're already doing it, right? It's like, oh my gosh. So I think part of it is what barriers do we put in our own way that isn't actually real? And
Yeah.
then finding these things with simple education, but also an environment to execute on them and just put them in place and create the habit. And it's like, oh, it wasn't as hard as I thought or was making it out to be. I think we need that as well.
And I think with most of us, I don't know if you've come across the book The Four Tendencies by Gretchen Rubin, Nick. I
I remember
refer to
chatting with
it.
you about that. Yeah.
Yeah, I refer to it often, and she talks about there's basically four types, and there's the one that kind of sticks out, and I refer to is because a majority of us we are obligers. And we, especially I think as women, we're very good at obliging everyone else. Where the term comes from is being able to uphold commitments to everyone else, but we often have trouble keeping that, like you said, the word that we, or the commitment to ourselves. And I think one of the reasons that I am loving what we're putting together um, is for that exact reason. Because most of us are obligers, most of us do need some external accountability. There are some very incredible individuals, and I actually speak from experience. I know I've known an obliger very well on the inside for the last 40 years because I am one, and I get it. And for everything that matters to me, I need accountability, even if that's just telling my husband, I'm waking up at 5:30 tomorrow morning to walk the dogs. Please kick me out of bed if I'm still in bed by 5:35. It's that, like, it is as simple as that. So definitely building in the accountability, but also I definitely think sometimes, like you said, right, Nick, you said that there is so much information, and it's really about dialing everything else down and working out, okay, what is actually important for me to do? How can I fit this in the little bit, these cracks of time that I can create for myself in my busy day, in this busy life? How can we make this work? And I think if I had to simplify what we're doing together, it is like a self-care roadmap. Like, that is really like, what is it that you need to do? What are the simple things that we can put into place from today that is gonna shift the dial, is gonna make a
Perfect.
difference?
Yeah. Let's go into that then, Denny. I think this is a perfect time. So let's talk about what we're going to be kicking off, what you're going to be leading us in over 6 weeks. We're going to be doing this. And we're kicking off October the 22nd. So that's going to take us through to November 30th for everyone part of the Women to Wealth community. So talk to us about this self-care roadmap. What's it going to look like? How can we be part of it? And then we'll rally and let's all do
Yeah,
it.
awesome. So look, I think this was actually born because I was like, if I had to simplify, what is it that I need to be putting my attention to? Just to give you I'm one example of the many busy women out there, right, Nick? And I know obviously I'm not an exception to the rule, but between work, between growing a business, I homeschool my daughter. We live in a semi-regional town in Victoria. like travel time. There's a lot of things that are vying for our time. There is work to be done on the property, with animals, etc. So I was like, if I had to simplify this for myself, what do we need to be paying attention to? And so the key things that we're going to look at over the next 6 weeks are, essentially, it is the keys to staying healthy in an unhealthy world. So we're going to look at things like the key pillars of health. So looking at where does inflammation stem from? How do we get our hormones under control? How do we protect our physical and our environment? I think both physical and mental. We're going to look at gut health. We're going to ask questions like, do you need to detox? And it's actually not what you think. We're going to look at things like stress and adrenal fatigue, issues that are really pertinent to women right now, today, who, for anyone who really wants to get the concentrated juice, right? It's like, actually, no, because that's not really that great, but it's like the essence. What do we need to be doing? What's important? What's not? And really be able to get clear on what is it for you, and what are some simple things that are either free or very low cost that you can do that really make a difference.
Yep.
So that's really, that's where we're at. And as you said, we're kicking off at 6 weeks. It is going to be a very, very small time commitment because, hey, we don't have like chunks of, 5-hour blocks of time. So it's going to be in real bite-sized snippets over those 6 weeks. There will be that accountability. There's going to be women who we are kind of in the same boat, looking to be well educated, very, very aware, but really wanting to get a handle on what is it, what are the current issues, and what do we need to do to make sure that not just for us, but anyone that we take care of is going to be their healthier selves.
I love that. I can't wait to kick it off. It's going to be great. So what we're going to do, I'm just thinking, so make sure that you get in touch with us, because a lot of the information, it will come through our email. So be on the Women to Wealth email list, also in our private group. So if you're on Facebook, I don't love it, but if you're going to be on there for any reason, it's to be into the Women's Wealth group. So join the group, and we'll have a lot of communication in there, and we'll set up the support structure that we need over the 6 weeks with Dani. So there'll be the education, the support, and I love how you said just like this simplified roadmap. These are the things to learn. This is what to focus on. This is what we can implement straight away. So I'm really excited. 6-week self-care roadmap. So please, whether you're listening to this or you're in our group, reach out to us, comment below, or be on the email list, and we'll get registrations for this group, Dani, and we'll all kick it off together starting October 22nd. Yeah. Dani, just want to say massive thank you. I appreciate you so much. I know we've done some really cool things together over the years, but I feel like it gets bigger and better, which it should. I'm really excited for what we're going to launch here. And I think because it's needed, I think that's why. It's like, I know you will make a difference for women in this space who really want to move the needle with their health. And as I said before, healthy women are the cornerstone to healthy societies. So it starts with us. And you said it's vital. We've got to prioritize ourselves first. So this is the start of doing that. Dani, appreciate you, and we'll see you in the group, and we'll be all kicking this off together in just a couple of weeks.